Hi, I'm Sean Bunker, and this is Writing a Book Step by Step, Episode 2. I am writing a book from scratch, and each week I'm posting videos talking about the process. So every week I'm going to go over challenges I've had and obstacles I've had to overcome in writing a book, and hopefully you can gain from the knowledge because you're there every step of the way. All right? So today, what we're going to talk about is, do you plan your story or do you just jump right in? And how do you develop characters, protagonist and antagonist, with great depth? So that's the very first thing. As you're getting started, do you plan your whole story out, or do you have a protagonist in mind and maybe a situation or a scene and you just start writing? Well, in the past when I've written, and the only things I finished that were big were 2 screenplays and 1 novel-size book that I haven't really submitted anywhere, so I don't have a ton of experience on this. But what I did in the past was I just started writing. I had a character in mind, and I had a question. For example, I wrote this one story, and I had this down-to-earth detective, a guy who doesn't believe in any advanced, like a mystery book. He thinks everything is very basic, very understand stuff, and he starts to find evidence that maybe there's supernatural involved in a killing, and I wanted to know how much it would take to convince him of the fact that there was some supernatural. So that's just an example of what I did in the past. But writing without planning did cause me some issues. For one thing, some of my plots did not have enough depth. That one character and that one situation that I thought of was not be enough depth for the story. I needed other plot lines. I also would have stories that weren't long enough when I was finished. They were too long to be a short story and too short to be a novel. In this case, so this is what I do. This particular instance, I had to start planning. I'll tell you why. Here's what I started with when I was doing this. When I got ready to write this, all I had in my head was an article I was reading. And it talked about scientists studying a star that was 3 billion light years away. And we can't travel 3 billion light years, right? We can't even travel at light speed. We think it's impossible. And there's gravity. So in my mind, as I was reading this, I was thinking, if we could overcome the whole gravity and insane distance, there's probably planets, I really believe this, that are springing up and civilizations that are developing, and based on everything from their gravity to all kind of stuff, they're going to have very different outlooks, personalities, just all kind of stuff. And I want to meet them. I want to see these places. So I can't, so that's why I decided to write about it, is to write about going to see these places. And I didn't want it to be like Star Wars, where they just walk in and there's people there and they're just a part of it. They're not exploring new cultures. I didn't want it to be like Star Trek, where they're meeting someone for the very first time and they're going in. So I knew I kind of wanted something in the middle, but I had no plot and I had no protagonist or antagonist. I had nothing like that. Okay, so in this case, I had to start planning. What I jumped into first was planning of my story. I knew I had one major issue as I start to plan the story I had to take care of, and that was this distance and the gravity thing. So I simply Googled some articles about space travel, anti-gravity. I came up with stuff about folding space, gravitrons. It was good enough for me to use that as the beginning basis of a plot line, being that civilization is getting to a point where, in the story, we can just travel. We can go 3 billion light years, 4 billion light years, that there's a way to get there in just a couple of weeks. It may not ever be accurate, but I'm not writing what life is going to be like in the world of science in 1,000 years. I'm writing a science fiction story. So that was only the very first basis I had of a plot. The next thing I did was I started working on the protagonist. And again, I had nothing. So my process, what I do is I don't just think about it. I actually write down what I'm thinking. So as I was writing things along the lines of, does he work for some type of government, he or she? Does this person work for a government agency? Is this person like an Indiana Jones of space? Is this person like a pirate of space? I mean, just who are they? And I kept writing down the questions. Are they this? Are they that? And what I came up with was I wanted my protagonist to be an everyday person. I didn't want them to be this person that could outpunch everybody, or the best pilot in the world, or the most attractive person or anything. I wanted just an everyday person. So then, in my mind, and started writing on paper, I was thinking to myself, what makes an everyday person in a story? Well, the first thing I had to think of was, why does he want to go to space at all? So I was writing down ideas again. Is he running from something? Does it involve love? Does it, what else could make this person go to, want to go to space? And it's not my own experience, but I came up with this sentence that my protagonist was saying to me. And in this case, it turned out to be a him. And he said, well, I met my wife, who's now my ex-wife, at the same pub that my parents met, and the same pub that my grandparents met. And I didn't want that. I wanted to go to space. So, okay, he's an everyday guy that just doesn't want to be contained where he's at. Well, how does he get to go about space? So then I thought, well, he'll buy a spaceship. But an everyday guy doesn't just buy a spaceship. So as I was writing this, I thought, no, he's making payments on a spaceship. And now it's starting to develop not just the character, but the galaxy, the universe that we're creating. Because in this case, if he doesn't make payments and he lands his spaceship at a spaceport, they would repossess it. They would shut it down until he had money. So I was thinking, what else do I want with this person? I was writing ideas down. Is he married? Is he a dad? What is he? And I'm a single dad. My daughter my little girl is going to be 18, so I guess she's not really that little. But I wanted a dad-daughter relationship. So I gave him a 14-year-old daughter, who I started jotting down some ideas for. And then you always have to ask yourself questions when you're making a character. I say character, you're a protagonist, you're an antagonist, but it doesn't have to be a major person. Anyone that has any little bit in your story, I think, needs to have depth. Even if that depth, you don't lay it all out on the pages, you don't lay out everything they've done, but it just helps you know how they're going to react. So I started thinking, why would this guy that wants to go to space, who's a regular guy, why would he ever put his daughter in danger? Because I wouldn't do that. The answer came back, he wouldn't. So I had to then understand that part of my plot was not them racing off into some type of adventure where people can get hurt, but a mentality of, we want to be safe as we can. This is our job. And it made me develop his daughter a little bit as well. It made her be someone that would tell her father, look, if you leave me behind, when I'm old enough, I'm just going to go into space anyway, and it'll be without your help and training. Okay, so it helped me start to develop her. So now I have this guy, and he's bought a ship. He's making payments on it. He's going to take his daughter to work with him. I want him to explore new planets, but what does he do initially? He can't. How do you pay your bills? You can't just, go off into space. He's a regular guy. He's not a billionaire or whatever, trillionaire would be in the future. So I had him be a delivery person, and that took me back to developing my plot. Part of it, really. So what I pictured was that advanced space travel was being given out by these mysterious, powerful beings. It was just enough to kind of make it where everyone in the entire universe started getting the ability to travel. If they already had space travel, getting the ability to travel through space rapidly. Okay? And I thought there would be a big organization made up of several governments who was contacting planets in communication with them, but couldn't quite get to them all. It was going through a process that probably involved following money and following mining. And with that, this group, I thought, could first hire our protagonist as a delivery guy. And for some reason, he became a delivery guy of pickles. I don't know why. He delivered other stuff, but pickles just seemed like such a mundane thing, okay? So I hope you kind of get a feel for how the development of this character is coming, is that this is why I'm thinking of this stuff. I started jotting down stuff. I thought, well, there has to be more than he's just a delivery guy who gets a chance to go to other planets after his delivery time. He kind of gets a promotion. And I wanted my character to have some type of pizzazz. So I started jotting down ideas again. Like, is it his fashion sense? Is it something he collects or does? And I came up with the idea that he would have, the planet he's from would have a great love of pop culture from our time. So the books, movies, comic books, video games, songs, and they don't quite have it right because they're far in the future, so they get stuff slightly wrong. But I had this character now, the protagonist, that's an everyday guy that started off as a delivery guy. He's making payments on a ship. He's getting a promotion, and all the time he's talking about music, books, movies. I think I said musics. Books, movies with his daughter and some other crew people that I went about creating. So I had a pretty good feel for him. So the next step was the antagonist. Now, your antagonist may be a person. It could be a big mountain. It could be a giant shark. It can be someone that's not bad, just another part of a romance triangle. But my belief is this person, we probably, when we instinctively write, we don't focus on them as much. We probably focus on the protagonist who we were just more interested in. But you have to focus on your antagonist more. Your antagonist has to be in the sphere of your reality bigger than your protagonist. Your antagonist has to be bigger than your protagonist. So I said that right. Okay, and the reason being, it's Billy Crystal that said, hey, without Goliath, David is just a punk kid throwing rocks. What would Luke Skywalker be without Darth Vader? What would Quinn be without Jaws, right? He would just be some fisherman. So you need to develop. So here is how I went about developing my antagonist. I had a picture in my head of my protagonist having something stolen from him and being abandoned in a very dangerous situation, and I determined I wanted it to be by his brother. So I started again jotting my notes down. Why would a brother do this? Well, the first thing I thought of, I'd had someone mention to me one time. It wasn't a dramatic thing. We were just talking about life, and he said, hey, you know, my dad went to all my brother's games, and he didn't really go to mine. And it wasn't a big deal, but I thought, what if I expand on that? So what if I had a dad that has, we'll say, brother A, which is our protagonist, the older brother, and brother B, which is the younger one, and he goes to all the games, and he does all kind of cool stuff. And I started thinking, again, I'm writing down what would be the difference. So I thought time would have to be a difference. So I played around with making the protagonist, 10 years, 15 years. I ended up settling on 8 years. So the protagonist, brother A, is 8 years older than his younger brother. So I thought as they're growing up, his dad's okay. When he's ready to leave, his dad starts drinking. His dad becomes not a nice person. And he starts taking it out on brother B. Brother A kind of knows his dad's drinking, but he doesn't really realize how bad things are going, that his dad is always saying to the younger brother, you can't ever live up to your older brother, you stink, you screw everything up, really, laying it on him. So I thought, would that be enough for younger brother to take out an older brother? Not quite. So again, I'm jotting down ideas like what else would do it? And I came up with the idea if you loved somebody. So what I pictured was the antagonist meets a girl, and she's not very nice, a woman, and she's a killer. But she really falls for brother B, and brother B falls for her. He takes her to the family and says, hey, look at who I fell in love with. And the dad, even though his dad's starting to get better from his drinking, the issues he had, he's still messing things up, and he says, oh, this is what I expected. You would bring a killer to our household. This is ridiculous. Just get out of here. So what I pictured was the younger son being rejected again, but he found someone that cared for him, and this person who's maybe not a very good person, and her. She's not just an empty vessel, right? So even though she's not a good person, she still fell in love with this person, and she still got rejected by his family. Could that now be a situation where she looks at her love and says, you know what, leave your brother. If he gets out of it, he gets out of it. He done. But I'm here with you. So that made me start to think that was a possibility. So that's how I start, and you can see how I'm starting to develop part of the plot, because we know now that the one brother is going to do some bad things to the other brother, that the wife is involved, and she's not a nice person. And we have the captain and his crew, including his daughter. So that's where we're going to kind of wind down on this one. I'm going to quickly jump into the next one. The next story the next class we're going to have is going to be on voice, which is the most important part of your writing, other than just getting out and writing. So again, we will have another class. If you're watching this, the very first thing you can do is set yourself time every day or every week, whatever it is you can manage. Set it, and positively you start writing no matter what. Thanks a lot for watching, and I hope to see you at the next class.